Good evening, everyone. The Amos Fortune Forum is now in session. We are in our 78th season of continuous fun in the summer on Friday nights here at the Meeting House. My name is Brad Smith. I'm going to have just a few introductory remarks and housekeeping, and then it'll be my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the evening. First, a few thank yous. Everyone is invited next door immediately after our presentation tonight for a reception. There'll be some nice cold drinks and some cookies. I want to very specifically thank Betsy Trimble, who every week organizes the receptions, and it's not an easy task, and we really appreciate what she does for us every week. She has gathered a number of people from Main Street here in Jaffrey. I'm not going to read everybody's names, but I did want to mention Castine Clerkin, who will be helping her tonight over next door. So please, as you exit the building here, you'll see some lights that will take you on a path just a few feet away. You'll have an opportunity to meet the speaker, ask questions that you may not have been able to ask during the regular session. I also want to thank Bruce Bartles and Ramana Lee for hosting Sam and his family for a very nice dinner tonight. And thank you to Dax Baird, who sponsored our beautiful flowers tonight that Bonnie at Calls put together. Thank you, Dax. I also want to, of course, thank all of you for coming out, as well as for your many generous donations that you make to the Amos Fortune Forum. This is free and open to all. It always has been, and it's our intention that it always will be. And it's thanks completely to you, as well as our corporate sponsors, that keep this a very healthy and lively organization. So we really appreciate it. If you would like to find out more about the forum, we do have a great little website. There's some cards that you may have accidentally sat on. There's a QR code that you can point your phone to, and that'll take you right to the website. Or you can just go to amosfortune.org. There's information about our speakers this summer. There's also a listing of every speaker and the title of their lecture or presentation since 1947 there. And it's really interesting to go through that and see how some of the subjects just don't change over time, and in some ways how they do. So we are recording tonight's presentation. We're very glad that you're here in this building, but if you have family or friends who aren't able to make it, or they live far away, let them know that probably sometime tomorrow afternoon it will be posted up on YouTube, and you can or they can watch it in its entirety. So, with that, I have the pleasure now of introducing tonight's speaker, Sam Evans-Brown. Without stealing any thunder from Sam, because he has a lot of information for you tonight, there are a few statistics that I found were really eye-popping from an article that was recently published in the New Yorker by Bill McKibben. And I'm just going to read you a few of them. The first, due in large part to solar and battery storage adoption, California is so far using 40% less natural gas to generate electricity than it did in 2023. That's just a year and a half or so ago. Number two, China currently installs more than half the world's renewable energy and storage within its own borders and exports most of the solar panels and batteries used by the rest of the world. In the first quarter of this year, total carbon emissions in China had actually decreased emissions linked to producing electricity fell nearly 6% as solar and wind have replaced coal. Thirdly, from January through April in India, which, by the way, is now the world's fastest growing economy and the most populous nation in the world, a surge in solar production kept the country's coal use flat and also cut the amount of natural gas used during the same period in 2024 by over a quarter. Surprisingly, this last stat wasn't in the article. Starting in 2022, when my wife and I installed solar panels on our roof, we stopped writing checks to Eversource each month. In fact, they usually send us a check once a year to settle up. So these are welcome statistics in a period where solar, and especially wind, is meeting with great political resistance in the U.S. Our speaker tonight, Sam Evans-Brown, has a front row seat in the transition to non-fossil fuel power, particularly in New Hampshire, where he's the executive director of Clean Energy New Hampshire. He'll describe the momentum that renewables have gained globally and in the U.S. and comment on the path New Hampshire has chosen so far on that journey, although I think he's going to stay primarily to the larger picture. Despite that momentum, Sam will help us understand and interpret the uncertainty that we feel based on his expertise and his experience and that of the organization that he leads. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in a warm welcome to Sam Evans-Brown. All yours.
Hey everyone, thank you for coming out on a gorgeous evening where you, by all rights, should be somewhere else, out of doors, instead of sitting in this hall to listen about energy of all subjects. I'm gonna confess that I picked the title of this topic months and months and months ago. I didn't actually check the date, but by my memory, it was before November, in which things changed dramatically. And when I sat down to come up with the slides that I would talk over, because I can't possibly keep myself organized enough to talk without slides, I felt that I had to change up what I was planning to talk about. So much has changed in such a short period of time that it was hard, and I, in fact, have found, I'm Mr. Optimism. In fact, I'm so much the optimist that my staff at Clean Energy New Hampshire find me a little bit exhausting, and it's been hard over the past couple weeks in particular to manifest that optimism. And so this talk has actually given me a really good opportunity to sort of sharpen my thinking about a lot of this. And so this is new material. If this was stand-up comedy, I would expect fully to bomb in front of you all because these would be new jokes, and I don't know necessarily, I haven't given a talk quite like this before. And as such, bear with me as we go. I like to give a little roadmap of where we're going. We're going to start with just like, who is Clean Energy New Hampshire? Why am I here in front of you? And how is it that the Amos Fortune Forum found me? But then we're going to get into the meat. And frankly, this talk is mostly not going to be about New Hampshire, even though my day job is 100% about New Hampshire. In fact, often, the entity that governs where the electricity comes from when we switch the lights in this building is a New England-wide organization called ISO New England, and we often are sort of pulled into the ecosystem of folks that try to advocate for ISO New England to do things differently, and I say, no, they're in Massachusetts. We work in New Hampshire. So again, new material, but genuinely speaking, from my perspective, the forces that are going to pull New Hampshire into the future are global forces. New Hampshire and the United States generally will find them to be irresistible. And that is the thesis of the talk that I'm bringing to you all tonight. So quickly, who the heck are we? Clean Energy New Hampshire. We're a local nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We've been around, depending on how you count it, for 20 to 40 years. Apparently, there was a chapter of the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association in New Hampshire going back to the 70s. And when they rebooted the organization in 2003, they were like, we found this bank account with $6,000 lying in it. But the modern iteration of Clean Energy New Hampshire started in 2003. We were the New Hampshire Sustainable Energy Association. We rebranded in 2018. We have a staff of 13 folks who are 100% focused on local energy matters. Our mission, vision, principles, if you like nonprofit talk, there it all is. Who we are is we're a membership organization. The members are any company that sees a role for themselves in the decarbonization of New Hampshire's economy, as well as many, many, many communities that are pushing for decarbonization, as well as countless individuals. We're now up to about 900-ish members when you count all the businesses, towns, and individuals who are supporting Clean Energy New Hampshire. And where we work is largely at the New Hampshire State House, which I don't have a slide about, so you can rest your eyes on this slide while I talk about something completely different. I am a registered lobbyist. We have 3 lobbyists on staff. I talk to lawmakers about what good energy policy would look like, and I try to convince them not to pursue bad energy policies. The rest of that staff of 13 overwhelmingly are working in local communities. So we have folks that are covering the Monadnock region, Coos County, Sullivan County, and the Seacoast that are helping small rural towns that don't have a ton of capacity. We're helping them to pursue clean energy projects. We're helping them to figure out how to write RFPs to put solar on the roof of their library. We're helping them to interact with weatherization companies to allow them to do energy efficiency at their town halls. We're helping them to write pro-solar local zoning ordinances. Anything that the town wants to do that will encourage the reduction of emissions, we want to help them do it. One of the jokes that I like to say is that we have even helped towns buy diesel trucks because the old diesel trucks were inefficient and the newer ones would cut emissions a little bit. And so we're like, okay, if that's what you want to do, we will help you figure that out. Anything that reduces emissions, we will help you do it. And so that's what the majority of the staff are doing. So that's Clean Energy New Hampshire. That's who we are. I will say, and this is a shameless plea, we have been hit by the policies of this federal government. We've had no fewer than 5 federal grants get canceled. I am looking at a big budget shortfall this year, and so if you are so inclined, we do have our annual report and some remittance envelopes on those 2 tables, and that's the only time you'll hear me talk about that. So, on with the talk. There are many folks who have arguments about how we cannot power the globe, the United States, or our state with renewable energy, and those folks are wrong. There are many challenges between where we are now and what a zero-carbon economy would look like. All of those challenges are, in my opinion, not easily, but all those challenges are overcomeable. It is a hard challenge, but it is by far the hardest challenge that society faces. The folks that will tell you that this is impossible, many of whom, and I will tell you I am coming from one camp. There are 2 camps in this big argument. One camp is represented principally by a gentleman named Vaclav Smil. Smil is Bill Gates' favorite thinker on this topic, and he would point you towards this slide. So what Vaclav Smil will tell you is that there has never been an energy transition. If you ask what was the year in which the most wood was burned on the planet, the answer to that question is 2024. We never transitioned off of wood to coal. We just started adding more and more and more energy on top of the energy we were already using. And so there are no energy transitions. Energy transitions are slow insofar as they do occur, and you cannot push the rope. There's only technological progress, and transitions will proceed at whatever speed the technology will allow it to proceed at. I am from the other camp. The reason I am from the other camp comes principally from this slide, which is very messy, and you probably can't see from back there, and so I have helpfully pulled out the important numbers for you. This is what's called levelized cost of energy. It is how much money you have to pay someone to build a power plant of a certain type. The yellow line is solar, the blue line is wind. We have seen a dramatic decline in the cost of these technologies over the course of the past decade in particular, and it absolutely changes the game. It means that this energy transition will not look like the transition from wood to coal or from coal to oil. It is going to look entirely different, and we'll get to that at the end. So this is the foundation of my optimism. Here's another great way to look at it. This is sort of a logarithmic scale. It's a great outfit called Our World in Data that you can pull these numbers from, and basically what drives this is the modularity and the manufacturability of the technologies that are driving this transition. When you build a solar panel, You make an ingot of silicon, and then you cut it into many, many, many slices. That then becomes a cell. Those cells are then mounted onto a panel, and it is a manufacturing process by which you have millions and millions and millions of opportunities to improve efficiency and to drive out costs. And that is what has driven these cost declines. You'll notice that nuclear power has seen a negative learning curve over the same period, and that's because it's the exact opposite process. When you build a nuclear power plant, you're building one bespoke, massive concrete facility. Each one of them is different. Each of them have their own engineering challenges. It means that nuclear tends to have the highest cost overruns of any technology on the planet. The only thing there's a book called How Big Things Get Done that has cataloged the cost of all sorts of mega projects worldwide. The only thing that does worse than nuclear are the Olympic Games. Solar and batteries are the opposite of that. You have many opportunities to learn how to do it better. Many of us have heard of Moore's Law, which is the principle by which every time you double the amount of computer chips, the cost falls by half. There's a similar principle that has been laid out in the literature called Wright's Law that applies to all of these types of technologies. So that's thing number one. It is a different kind of technology. Thing number two is what is referred to as the primary energy fallacy, in which Bill Gates is a very smart guy, but Bill Gates has fallen prey to the primary energy fallacy, and so has Vaclav Smil. So when you take a fuel and you light it on fire, your engine block gets hot. Exhaust goes out of your smokestack or out of your chimney. That is waste heat. The primary heat, the amount of energy that's in the fuel, is not what gets delivered to you as useful energy. What does that mean? That means, so this is another messy chart that I will try to explain to you. Here on the left is the primary energy. Whoa! Here on the left. Oh man, it's a very sensitive clicker. Is the primary energy. On the right is the useful energy. That big old block, which you all probably can't see, but I can because I'm very close to it, says rejected energy. That is waste. You will see many calculations that say, here's all of the energy and all the fossil fuels that we use every year. If we were to replace that all with renewable energy, you'd need this many wind turbines and this many solar panels. Very frequently, that calculation is ignoring that we waste 2/3 of the energy in those fossil fuels. So we have just taken the challenge and we have reduced it by 2/3. This is going to be 3 times easier than many of those skeptics think that it is. And I will tell you, as someone who talks to lawmakers and governors and all of the smartest people allegedly in the state, many of them will spout those numbers to me. And I say, you're falling prey to the primary energy fallacy. And they don't even know what that means. So, many folks will also say renewable energy is too expensive. This drives up cost. Sure, the technology itself may be decreasing in cost, but it's intermittent, and so you're going to drive up the total balance of system costs of the grid. This is data from a gentleman named Zeke Housefather. What you see are the tiny dots. The tiny dots are states. The states that are farthest right have the most wind and solar. The states that are farthest left have the least wind and solar. The states that are higher have more expensive electricity. The states that are lower have less expensive electricity. The line down the middle is the plot. The line goes down and to the right. The more wind and solar you have in the United States of America, the cheaper your electricity is. This is real number. These are real numbers. These are not models. So then they'll say, oh, but what about the intermittency? What about the variability? Doesn't that cause more blackouts? Here's the same data for what's referred to as SAIDI, System Average Interruption Duration. It is a measure of the intermittency of the grid. It's a measure of blackouts. It is the same relationship. More renewable energy on the grids in the United States has resulted in less blackouts in those states, or at least maybe has not directly resulted. There is no evidence that more intermittent renewables are causing blackouts. So the doubters are wrong. Next step, the horse is out of the barn. So this is referred to as the hedgehog graph. This is one of my favorite graphs of all my graphs. And I have many graphs. I love them all equally, but this one is my favorite. The yellow lines are forecasts from well-respected energy forecasting modeling houses. Outfits like the International Energy Agency, These are folks who try to produce information that investors can use to decide where to put their money. And the yellow lines are what they thought solar energy was going to do in a given year. The black line is what solar actually did. Every single year, solar has beaten the pants of off what the forecasters thought it was going to do. And we have seen, I actually heard an interview with one of the modelers who said, yeah, every year I would say, sure, it's going up on an exponential growth curve now, but how long can that last? And he said, and after about 7 years of thinking that, I stopped believing that. So generally speaking, people want cheap energy. Solar's the cheapest energy out there. And so people are building it absolutely everywhere. So here's the global picture. I think we can actually skate through this one fairly quickly. But 2024 was the fastest deployment of solar energy globally, and this is not just the United States, globally, of any year by a fair margin, 49% higher than the next closest peak. I heard some of the great numbers from Bill McKibben's New Yorker article. The one that I really liked is that we are building a gigawatt of solar in the globe approximately every 15 hours. A gigawatt is what Seabrook Station, the nuclear plant on the seacoast, produces. Every 15 hours, a gigawatt of solar is getting built somewhere in the world. Forget the numbers, but it's something like it took 30 years to do the first terawatt of solar. It took 2 years to do the next terawatt, and now we're doing about a terawatt a year. It's growing faster than any source of energy in human history. Sorry, gets me a little emotional, even to say it out loud up on a stage like this. There's now more money globally flowing into energy transition technologies than there is going into fossil fuels. And many people say, renewable energy, it needs subsidies to proceed. This is not just a Western country phenomenon. In fact, the global leader in all of this is China. China is deploying solar faster than it's faster than you can possibly imagine. China built more solar last year than the United States has, period, in 1 year. It's like a race that is going so fast, and we don't even know the race is happening. So, again, I want to talk about some of the doubters. Some of the doubters will say, China's opening a coal plant every 3 days or something like that. That's not a real statistic. I just made that one up. China's building all sorts of stuff, to be totally transparent. They are building coal. They're building a whole heck of a lot of solar. They're building nuclear. They're the country that's building nuclear faster than any country in the world. Now, but to the coal question. China does not have cheap natural gas like the United States has. Solar is an intermittent resource. You need to have something to balance it out. So yes, they're building lots of coal plants. That doesn't mean that they run 24/7. They just use them to balance out the solar. In fact, they would like to use them less. And so those coal plants are seeing what's called falling capacity factor, which is just they're using them fewer and fewer hours of the day. And the folks that look at this are forecasting that those power plants are going to run less and less and less and less as China deploys more and more and more cheap renewables. So I find that one to be a red herring. Now, sure, you could say China, they are a country that has made a choice. It's their industrial strategy to pursue solar. They're going to sell it to the entire world. They're subsidizing the heck out of it. Sure, they're going to build it in their own country. China's not the only country that's pursuing this, though. The incredible surplus manufacturing capacity that they have built up means that countries all around the world are buying it up. So this is one of my favorite stories to that front. This is, so Jenny Chase, who you're seeing a tweet of hers there on the left, is, for my money, the smartest solar analyst in the world. And Jenny noticed this phenomenon back in 2023, where she was looking at imports, the logs of imports of solar panels into Pakistan, and saying, man, Pakistan sure is importing a lot of solar panels. And where the heck are they going? Because there was no record of people building solar in Pakistan. Pakistan has a grid that peaks at 40 gigawatts, and in 2023, they had imported something like 7 gigawatts of solar. She's like, where the heck was it all going? So she started looking at Google Earth, and all of that solar was getting installed behind the meter without the utility's permission on the rooftops of buildings all over Pakistan. So since Jenny noticed this, she was the one who sort of caused the phenomenon of people doing this. There have been all sorts of reporters who've gone to Pakistan and just wandered around the streets, and they find that there are these little cottage industries of people who have bought imported solar panels. They've paired them with like a lead-acid battery, and they sell it as this little cheap kit that you can buy right from their storefront. And all sorts of shop owners will just like walk out in the morning, and they'll like roll up the window of their shop, and they'll bring out their solar panels, and they'll stick them out in the street, and sit there with the battery, and they'll charge all sorts of people's phones off of them, because it's so cheap. There are countries all across the world that are doing these types of things. So this is the list of all the countries that are getting 25% of their energy from solar right now. There's all sorts of countries on this list that I guarantee you weren't thinking were going to be on there when you walked into this room. Estonia, Hungary, Greece, Chile, right? These are not high-income countries. They're installing it because it's cost-effective. Balcony solar is one of my favorite phenomenon that has popped up in the past couple of years. Germany has really high electric rates, a lot of renters, a lot of apartment owners in Germany, and so there's this new phenomenon of people just buying solar panels, they just hang them out on their balcony, and the German utilities approved a process by which you can just take the thing and you can just plug it into an outlet in your wall, and it backfeeds into the house through an outlet in your wall. Because these are just a few panels. You're never going to produce more than you're consuming in your house. It's never even going to touch the grid. And so, balcony solar has become this absolute phenomenon in Germany, where you go and you walk down the streets, you look up, and the balconies are lined with solar. The state of Utah, which is by voting records the most conservative state in the nation, just approved a law allowing balcony solar. It's called the Consumer Right to Generate. So you're going to start seeing this in the United States now too. It is just unstoppable. This is a technology that people want, it's inexpensive, and it's happening. So, once you start to build that momentum, it becomes very difficult to keep the wheel from spinning. This is also happening. There's a similar phenomenon with electric vehicles. This is global electric vehicle sales. Once again, China has an industrial policy that says, we want to win the energy technologies of the future. They very consciously, 10, 15 years ago, said these are what the technologies of the future are going to be, and they placed bets on them. So does anybody know, I'm going to encourage you to shout this out, the largest car maker in the world? Okay, we have an informed audience. It's BYD. BYD is a Chinese automaker that has now surpassed every other automaker in the world. They make almost exclusively electric vehicles. Build your dreams is what BYD stands for. I have a BYD hat that I got a couple of years ago at a Department of Environmental Services event before we weren't allowed to talk about Chinese auto companies, and I like to wear it around just to be sort of, inflammatory. BYD has a car called the Seagull. It's like a Honda Fit, goes 200 miles on a charge. It costs $7,500. They keep dropping the price of this car. Every time I turn around, they've dropped the price again. And one of the biggest markets for the Seagull is Brazil. These are not rich people cars. EVs are not fancy people cars. They are the cars that make the most sense to drive. We have now seen countries excuse me, just want to make sure I'm getting this right. Ethiopia has now banned the import of internal combustion engine vehicles. Because Ethiopia does not have oil, they have to import all of their oil, and they would much prefer to use their abundant hydropower to fuel their transportation sector. And as such, they are now just pushing their economies towards electric vehicles. So, why is this? It's because it just saves you a whole heck of a lot of money. So I did this math last night. This is just an online EV cost calculator that you can grab. I used Brad's car. This is the internal combustion engine car on the left is, on the left is a Subaru Forester, great car. New Hampshire people love them. The one on the right is a Tesla Model Y, which in 2023, which was the top selling car in the world. We sold more Model Ys in 2023 than Toyota Corollas. You save $700 a year. Even in New England, which is one of the highest electricity cost regions in the country, you save $700 a year on these. In many other parts of the world, electricity is a lot cheaper than it is here in New England. People are buying these cars because it's cheaper to get around in them. And it's not just cars. It's all sorts of types of vehicles. In fact, the biggest market for electric vehicles now is 2- and 3-wheelers. So these are the tuk-tuks in India. They're little mini cabs. They're little motorbikes that people use to get around in other nations. And this is making a serious dent in oil demand. So for the first time in a very long time, we're starting to see the growth of oil consumption, of oil extraction starting to slow as demand is being destroyed by electric mobility. And once again, this slide is probably slightly out of order. Like I said, there are a few jokes that are going to bomb in here. So we were the leaders in this space, but no more. BYD has now surpassed Tesla as the largest electric vehicle maker in the world. So here's the slide I meant to talk about. Here's the destruction of oil demand that is happening because of electric mobility. No, so what does that mean? When more and more of the world starts to go electric, it reduces the demand for oil. When demand goes down, prices fall. The shale industry, the sort of shining light of the American energy economy, according to the current administration, is an underreported story that the shale boom was an absolute catastrophe for investors. Shale drillers lost $300 billion in private capital. There was such enthusiasm for, fracking. We're doing this thing. We're getting oil from places we couldn't get anymore. And the drillers would go to the investors and say, we just need a little more money, just need a little more. And they weren't actually making a profit. From 2010 to 2022, they were not making profits. They were setting capital on fire. Those investors will never make that mistake again. So what's happening now is all of those drillers are pulling back. We're seeing rig counts falling. We're seeing wells get shut in. And I will tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, if no one else has told you, this year we will see less oil extracted in the United States of America than under Joe Biden in 2024. Energy dominance. So this is the global numbers. We're seeing oil growth at its lowest level in a very, very long time. I don't have a data series that goes back any farther. So the flywheel is spinning. They're eating the market share of the incumbents. To me, what this says is that this transition is inevitable. It says the United States can try to pretend that all this is not happening, but it's all happening with or without us. So we can decide that we're going to be a petro state and that we're going to double down on the energy technologies of yesterday, or we can decide to become a part of that future and we can try to compete in the race that, as I said, it seems that we do not even know is happening, and see where we go. So, back to Václav Smil. Why is this transition different than the transition from wood to coal? Why would we not just expect that renewable energy will simply eat up the new energy demand as the economy grows, as opposed to actually eating into the market share of the incumbents? I think that this transition, unlike the energy transitions of the past, is much more like a technological transition than what we saw when we started to drill more oil or drill more natural gas. So on the left, you have 1900. On the right, you have 1913. On the left, you got one little car there in the red circle. 13 years later, the streets are clogged with cars. Why did that happen? It happened because many people said, wow, these car things are really great. They can go a lot farther. The streets are not filled with horse manure, and we would like to pursue this technological change because we think it makes our lives better. My hypothesis, unlike Václav Smil, is that the energy transition will proceed for exactly those reasons. People prefer these technologies. They will make their lives better. So we are EV drivers in my family. We have left behind all gas cars. In May, we went to Utah and rented a gas car. And I tell you what, when you've been driving an EV for a number of years and you go back to a gas car, it's just like, oh, what is wrong with this thing? You step on the gas and it's just like, oh, it takes an eon for it to do anything in response. It's noisy. You turn it off and the AC turns off. What is wrong with this thing? Our EV is just a better car. They're rad. They accelerate way too fast. I can, when on these 90-degree days, I can go in and get my kids at preschool and I can leave the AC blasting and I don't feel bad that there's a 2-ton engine just idling right there and wasting energy. It's just a little heat pump that's a very efficient machine pulling a little bit, but and then I can get back into the car and I look at the other parents who've left their cars idling in the driveway and I just like, oh God, why can we not get through to them? Sorry, Peanut Gallery is my wife in the front. I didn't hear what she said, but I'll learn about it later. So this is another very messy chart. I apologize for all the very messy charts that I throw up at you. These are speeds with which Americans have adopted different types of technologies. Here's a sort of tidier version of it. Purple is the internal combustion engine. Yellow is electricity, that's rural electrification. Green is refrigerators. Red is televisions. Orange is cell phones. If you were to pull out the internet, it's even faster. Adoption of new technologies just keeps getting faster. And I think that is the dynamic that will drive the energy transition forward. And I think that we will not be the entity that's leading it. I think that this is going to be led by China. And that's the part that actually kind of kills me to step on the stage and say. It's the reason why, over the past 3 weeks, it's been really hard to manifest the optimism that I have been manifesting for many, many years and irritating my friends and coworkers and staff. And it's frankly, it makes me just really sad that we're at where we're at in this country. I think that we're ceding a place of leadership, and that's what the passage of the big bad bill represents to me. And why? America is unique. Across most of the world, natural gas is a really expensive fuel. The only places in the world where natural gas is inexpensive are petrostates. It's Saudi Arabia, it's Qatar, it's the United States. And I believe that we are captured by a politics of a petrostate. And meanwhile, the rest of the world is becoming enthralled by a nation that wants to make themselves an electrostate. And that's where we're headed. Another fun fact, why do we get into this mess where we're at? Solar power is cheap globally. It is more expensive here in the United States than anywhere else on the planet. Those tariffs that we're paying right now, that are Donald Trump's tariffs, those tariffs were established by Barack Obama. And they have been upheld on a bipartisan basis ever since. There's many arguments why you might want to create and protect a domestic solar industry, but it's pretty obvious, in my opinion, that we're getting the worst of both worlds right now. And as we are a petrostate, I think that the reason that this story that I'm bringing to you here and now might be novel and many people may not have heard it is that there are incumbent interests that will fight for their lives to make sure that Americans do not realize what's happening in the rest of the world. So you're hearing much, much less climate denial. If you even listen to Chris Wright, who's the Secretary of Energy for Donald Trump, he doesn't say climate change isn't real. He just says we have to adapt to it. And he says those other solutions that are out there, those don't work. We have pivoted from climate denial to attacking the solutions. And so I will often hear many well-meaning folks repeating fossil fuel talking points back to me about how all of the things that, I will confess, we are dyed-in-the-wool greenie weenies. We have the energy-efficient home, we have the solar, we have the EVs, and they'll say, oh, yeah, energy-efficient homes, too bad they're so expensive. And it's like, I built one of those. And as a result of having built it, we pay almost nothing in our energy bills year-round. It is, in my opinion, the foundation of our economic well-being as a family. And here I have someone saying to me that, up is down and that the sky is orange. And I think that that's the result of this. These are incumbent industries that are defending their incumbent interests with money. And we're now hearing them making those arguments through our friends and families. So this is sort of my, I was always told, you got to wrap it all up. The folks that think this is impossible just don't know math. the technologies are here, they're ready, they're deployable, they're deploying at rates that are absolutely unprecedented in human history. And unfortunately, I think we've walked off the field in the global competition. So that is my talk. And I was told to leave time for questions, so I tried to hurry through, and I'm happy to take them. Yeah, so I'll repeat the question because you don't have a mic. So the two questions were, what will the passage of the BBB do to the solar industry? Will it devastate the solar industry? And the second is, folks who are not homeowners, how can they choose electric vehicles when there's no infrastructure for them to use to charge, if I've sort of summarized those correctly. So Clean Energy New Hampshire our members are the solar industry. In fact, if there is a solar company that's not a member of Clean Energy New Hampshire, I'd like you to find them and shame them and tell them that they should become members, because they're free riding off of our good work. But I will tell you, I've had many calls with members since the passage of the bill, and it will, in fact, be ugly. It'll be bad. There's going to be a flood of customers, particularly in the residential sector. Anybody who's been thinking about doing solar now is saying, I've got to do it before December 31st. That is going to stress the capacity of all the solar installers in the state. And so what are they going to do in response? They're going to jack up their prices, because they can fill their book of work between now and December 31st, because anybody who's desperate will say, okay, that's the price, I'll pay it. And so the price of solar will rise between now and then as a result of this completely artificial cliff that has been created in December 31st. I think many of those installers will struggle to get the jobs done. There'll be a backlog of customers, people will get really frustrated, and it'll be really ugly. And then December 31st will arrive, and business will fall off a cliff. And then it'll be really, really hard for them. So just bear that in mind if anyone's in that boat and considering that choice. I will also tell you that everyone is not a homeowner, and so the solution for how do we get more solar on the grid when not everyone can throw it on their roof is community solar. And we have actually, through a number of policy steps that we have worked really hard on since 2021, we have started to create a nascent community solar industry in the state of New Hampshire. And this bill is going to be absolutely devastating to those facilities as well. I had a call with a member that's in the community solar space on Thursday, and they said, we just killed all of our New Hampshire projects. We're just walking away from all of them. Because there are other states that have more viable markets, and we know we can make it work there, but New Hampshire has really low reimbursement rates for those bigger community solar arrays, and so you're the first one that we're going to pull the plug on. They're not all going to walk away. I have another member who said, yeah, we've been running around buying up everybody else's projects, and we're going to try to make a go of it. So there will be a bit of heterogeneity. I do not think that this is the end of the solar industry. I think prices will rise as a result of this. I think everyone's going to pay higher electric bills because of the passage of this bill. And when prices rise, the solar industry, it's really hard if electricity prices are here and you've got to duck under it. But if electricity prices are up here, it's suddenly easier, even if you don't have the tax credit. So for better or worse, the fact that we all are going to pay more for electricity will be the thing that saves the solar industry. So that's my first answer to your question. It won't go away. We'll deploy less than we would have. We'll have some unfortunate side effects to the passage of the bill, but it will persist, even in the US. Now, EVs. I spent a lot of time thinking about how we can make EVs more accessible to folks. The first thing I would say, and I know this because I have two in-laws that we just spent in-laws, brother and sister-in-law, who we just spent the night with last night, that have two electric vehicles and do not have a fast charger. They are renting. They just plug them into a 120-volt outlet, and they charge really slow. You leave that sucker into one of these outlets that's right here along the wall overnight, and you get like 40 miles of range from that night of charging. But the average American drives 34 miles a day. Many people can charge level 1 just at a 120-volt outlets and still have an electric car that gets them around more affordably than the car that they have. Not everybody, right? Not everybody can. Maybe you don't have off-street parking. Maybe there's no exterior outlet. There's many reasons why you might not be able to do that. And that's why we need public infrastructure. We need better EV charging infrastructure. And unfortunately, I think the passage of this bill means that it's going to take 5, 10 years longer before we have that in a widespread way, which means that the people who could use this low-cost mobility more than anybody else are just not going to get access to it, which is extremely unfair. In the back. Yep. Yeah. So I notably didn't have my storage slides. So the question was, how do you deal with the intermittency of wind and solar? That is a quite difficult challenge. And there's a saying in climate land that I'll repeat here on the stage, which is there is no silver bullet, there's silver buckshot. So the answer to how we deal with intermittency will be a suite of strategies that will reduce the cost of intermittency. In the near term, my personal opinion is that it's actually just not a problem. What you do is you just keep the fleet of natural gas-powered power plants that power New England right now, and you just run them less. And you rely on them when you need them, and the money that you save on the fuel is enough to pay for the benefit of having those solar panels. So that's the immediate term answer, is like, we've already got the answer. It's all the power plants that we already have. Now, eventually, we'd like to stop using them altogether. And that's when you start to look into how do we firm those resources over the long term. The first step, I do think, is batteries. So I alluded to this, but batteries, similar to solar, it's a manufacturing process. And we are seeing price declines on batteries that absolutely mirror the price declines that we had for solar over the course of the past decade. So batteries will already are getting cheaper at a shocking pace, and that will be the first tranche, right? So right now, the peak demand for electricity was about 2 hours ago at 6 o'clock on summer days, and that's when the sun is starting to go down. So from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m., which is about the 4-hour window that a set of lithium-ion batteries that's installed at a grid substation are typically configured to run, that'll be the first tranche, is that we're going to lower that peak demand from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock using battery storage. Now, still, there's going to be a whole heck of a lot more of the year where we're relying on fossil fuel power plants. So what do you do then? So ISO New England has looked at this question, and they said there's a number of answers to it. Probably the most expensive thing to do would be to build way more variable wind and solar than you need. And the number that they land on is 96 gigawatts for New England. Our peak demand right now is 28 gigawatts. So we're saying we need to triple the amount of variable renewables that we would use, and then those would be used for charging batteries, and that would get you through the coldest, darkest night of the winter in New England. That's probably the most expensive strategy. Much of the year, those variable renewables would actually get curtailed because they'd be using more energy, they'd be generating more energy than we actually need, and so we would be building all of this capacity that we would just then turn off. What they have said is that we can save dramatically on how much it costs to create firm, reliable, dispatchable energy in New England by deploying what's called clean, firm technologies. What are those? It's things like nuclear power, it's things like fossil fuels with carbon capture and sequestration, and it's things like advanced geothermal, which is just starting its technological path down the cost curves. To me, that's the last 20% of the problem. We can get 60, 70, 80% of the way there without answering this particularly thorny technological, without cracking this particularly thorny technological nut. I don't know what the technological mix is that's going to get us there, but it's going to be something that we haven't quite figured out yet. You were in the front.
What do you see in the next put panels here last year?
So I got asked a technological question first. I actually think that's the easier question than the question you just asked. So the question was, politically, how do we get everybody on board with this? The political challenge, the technology, in my opinion, is easier than the politics. And I believed that back in 2021 when I got into politics, and now I'm even more convinced of it. And what we've seen over the course of the past 6 months is, to me, absolutely baffling. To me, we are watching a country cut off its nose to spite its face. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I will give you my one take on this. I actually think New Hampshire has a particularly interesting opportunity with our new governor. Kelly Ayotte in 2015, in 2016, in the run-up to the re-election, was the only Republican senator to endorse Barack Obama's Clean Power Plan, which I don't know if anyone here even remembers the Clean Power Plan. At the time, we were, it was, cats and dogs sleeping together, and there were going to be blackouts, and in reality, we actually hit Obama's Clean Power Plan goals without the Clean Power Plan even happening because of technological progress. Ayotte was the only Republican to break with her party and endorse that. Thereafter, when she left office, she served on a number of boards that I think exposed her to thinking that would encourage her to believe that this challenge is solvable and it's an area that she could lead in. And I have been saying that for almost a year now, but I haven't actually seen any signs that the governor is interested in stepping into this space as an area for her to lead. And I think she needs to hear from her constituents that they want her to lead on this, that she can chart a new course for her party as a national leader in her party on how to not cut off the nose of the nation despite its face. So that's the closest I have to an answer to the question that I think is actually the hardest question. Go ahead. So the question, to repeat it, is how do we pay for the upgrades to the grid that all of this electrification will entail? Great question, another hard question. You also alluded to what's called the cost causer pays principle, which is a principle of rate design in the electricity space, which is that whoever causes an upgrade has to pay for the whole thing, which, in my opinion, don't make no sense. Because thereafter, many people may benefit from that upgrade that you have paid for, but there's no mechanism by which to share the cost of that upgrade with other people. I'm not going to dig into cost causer pays right now because there's many answers to that question, and it's kind of technical. But broadly, New England is going to see electricity demand increase by 11% over the next 10 years. That's what ISO New England is forecasting. We have seen flat electricity growth for almost 3 decades in New England. If you go back to the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, we saw rates of electricity demand increase that were exactly like what we're being forecasted right now. Not only can we meet this rising demand, we've done it before. We just need the utilities to remember how it was that they did it. And I have the CEOs of all 3 investor-owned utilities' cell phone numbers in my phone. I talk to them quite a lot. One of them, who I will not name, has been in the business, well, they've all been in the business for a very long time. That's a feature of the electric utility industry. And I was talking to him about this very challenge, and he was like, how are we going to do this? And I was like, my man, how long have you been in this job? And he told me, and I said, don't you remember what it was like back then? And he was like, well, yeah, I do. It was like, it felt like a lot of times like we were holding on by our fingernails, like we didn't quite know if the grid was going to stay up. It felt like but he's like, yeah, but we made it work. And so I think it's actually a very solvable challenge. And in fact, the utilities get paid very well to do this. So the other thing I'd say, though, is that this actually, unlike previous types of electrification, this actually presents us with a tremendous opportunity because much of this electrification is flexible. And in particular, electric vehicles can be charged flexibly. So I mentioned this before, the average American drives 34 miles a day. Our car that's parked out there has a 300-mile range, right? I don't really care what time of day that thing is charging. When I come home and plug it in, it's typically right after work. That's right at the peak moment of demand. I don't care if it starts then, or starts at midnight, or starts at 2 a.m. Send me a price signal. Make it so it's cheap for me to charge at low demand times. And what you're doing is you're filling in the valleys and you're lowering the peak. Now, the way electricity rate making works is that the cost of the infrastructure is fixed. Regulators get together with the utilities and they say, what is the cost of the infrastructure? They divide that cost by the number of sales. So you got a numerator and a denominator. And then they say, whatever is the result of that math equation is the electricity rate that you pay. If we're able to fill in I'm not a math person, the bottom one, help me out here, denominator, thank you people, fill in the lower number with more electricity demand on off-peak times, we're able to pump more demand into the same infrastructure, which results in lower electric rates, which to me is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in all this. In the back. I'm going to repeat the question just in case folks couldn't hear. He was just complimenting me, which thank you, sir, for having said, that you use the solar when the sun shines and you run the gas at night, and that's how you get started on all this. This is actually quite intuitive if you've ever been to an off-grid home, right? An off-grid home doesn't have just solar. An off-grid home doesn't have just a backup generator. An off-grid home doesn't have just batteries. They have all three, right? And the New England electric system is exactly that, just at a much larger scale. And so it's actually, if you have an off-grid home, the cheapest thing to do isn't just to run a gas generator 24/7. Cheapest thing to do is install some solar panels so you can run that thing a little less. And then maybe install some lead-acid batteries so you can run the thing even a little less. It doesn't mean you don't have the generator there at the beginning. Now, I do think that in the very near future, we're going to see off-grid homes that ditch the gas generator because they don't need it anymore. And I think the grid's going to go the same way. Gentleman here. A great question. This is actually a really great question. So if solar is so cheap, why does it need subsidies, right? Totally fair. There's an answer to that. It's called climate change. We put clean energy on sale because we wanted to deploy it faster than it would go otherwise, because we're worried about climate change. That isn't to say that the solar industry is going to collapse. In fact, when I answered that question, that's not what I said. I said the solar industry will persist. We're just going to get less of it than we were going to otherwise. That's not what I said. So New England has some of the highest electric rates in the country. And this is a fun fact that the first solar entrepreneur that I ever interviewed back when I was a reporter said. If you install solar in New England, even though it is less sunny here than Arizona, it'll pay for itself faster than in Arizona. Because even though you generate less, the cost you're avoiding from the grid is higher. We are going to install a lot of solar in New England, even without the subsidies, because it is the cheapest thing. When you look at the ISO New England interconnection queue, which is all of the projects that are proposing getting built, the people with a lot of money, because they cost millions of dollars per megawatt, the people who are making bets and they're building projects, it is wind, solar, and batteries. No one's building natural gas. That's a great question. The question is, other than just going out and putting solar on your roof, which maybe you can't, maybe, many reasons why people can't, which is absolutely true and fair, what else can we do? For my money, what you should do is get involved in politics. You should know your local lawmaker, you should call your local lawmaker, you should get coffee with them, and they should hear your concerns. You should organize locally. You can get on an energy committee locally and start pursuing projects at the municipal level here. One of the things that Clean Energy New Hampshire does is help to equip local energy committees with tools and resources to do local projects. And I would say that you should pursue this strategy on a completely nonpartisan basis. So I'm concerned about climate change. Many people are not. It has become a very polarized issue. And I will say, my Republican friends would tell me this, and it is true, that if New Hampshire were to sink into the center of the earth tomorrow and all our emissions were to evaporate overnight, the impact of all of New Hampshire's emissions going away overnight on global climate change would in fact be negligible, because this is a global problem, right? So let's keep that in mind. But that's not to say that we shouldn't pursue strategies that are actually economically advantageous for us and also have the benefit of reducing emissions at the same time. And I think that message can resonate with anybody from any political stripes. I hope. Sir. Oh, yeah. So the question was, I haven't covered vehicle to grid or vehicle to home. If folks aren't familiar with that, many electric vehicles are equipped out of the box so that you can plug them into a bidirectional charger and it can be your backup generator for your house. The Hyundai Ioniq 6 is the one and 5 are the two that are sort of the most mainstream. But interestingly, the Nissan Leaf has been equipped with this capability since 2010. And hilariously, we have a 2013 Nissan Leaf, which we jokingly refer to as the car on a leash because it doesn't go very far and it gets shorter and shorter range every year. But it was very, very cheap. It's a very cheap way to get around. That car has a 24 kilowatt hour battery. If you were to install 2 Tesla power packs in your basement, that's a 13 kilowatt hour battery. So my janky, junky 2013 Nissan Leaf has double the capacity of 2 Tesla Powerwalls, right? I've looked at it. We could run our house on our old Leaf for 2 days if we had a power outage. So I am very excited about vehicle to grid. The auto manufacturers have been much more lukewarm on it, I think, until now. So there's 2 problems. One is getting chargers and cars that have met the UL certification in order to be able to do vehicle to grid in a way that is safe enough that local officials are going to feel psyched about people doing this in their homes. That challenge has now been solved, right? Because we have cars and chargers that are out of the box capable of doing that. That's a development that has only occurred in the last year or 2. The second challenge, so now that first challenge has been solved, I personally am very bullish on the idea that this will be a killer app that will sell electric cars. When you go to the dealership, if you're EV curious, and they say, oh yeah, it does all these things, oh, by the way, that Ford Lightning will run your house for a week, and we've got a charger right there that they can set up on a generator interlock, and it's going to do it for $600. That is going to sell cars like hotcakes. I think that's already happening. My parents were offered that when they bought a used Ioniq 5. I think it's going to start happening very quickly. The second barrier, though, is that people are not going to discharge their car battery onto the grid during peak demand days when the grid is stressed unless you pay them. They're going to say, hey, dude, I don't just want to do this to be a good citizen and degrade my battery and then maybe not be able to go as far tomorrow. I want you to pay me for that service. We need the utilities to create tariffs and rates that will encourage them to do that. That requires wise regulators who understand that this tariff will pay for itself and reduce costs for all electric ratepayers, which it will, and it requires wise politicians to be appointed that will appoint those wise regulators. Those 2 circumstances have not been met yet in New Hampshire. And now Brad's going to yank me off the stage.
Sam, thank you very much. This is really interesting. Thank you. Really good stuff. Stay right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Really good. As is our tradition here at the forum, we'd like to present Sam with a half-gallon of New Hampshire maple syrup, which I'm sure was manufactured through biomass. Thank you, Sam.
Am I going to electricity?
Could have been.
Reverse osmosis? Yeah.